Welcome to Iron Edge. I'm Pete Morton.
Hey guys, Shad Flores, coming to you from Oklahoma City this time, not Charleston, where I had a great visit with Pete, but excited to introduce you to Pastor Chris Russo, who's there in West Ashley at Seacoast Church. Great conversation just about his path, his journey to Christ, and how he continues to find his fulfillment every day and journeying on with him. So we think you're going to get a ton out of it. Enjoy.
Thank you for being here, Chris. Pastor Chris Russo. I've known you for a few years now. You know a little bit about me because we've had some conversations as my pastor, of course, so please don't bring any of that up. Just kidding. We are looking at different individuals, especially within our group. Like I said before on some of these, we have a huge pool of really qualified people, not just qualified, but people with stories that are impactful, you know. And I know yours. I've heard it a few times from the pulpit at Seacoast, at the main campus and in West Ashley. And it's always struck me as I know you don't. I don't want to say you minimize it, but I think it's your story. You might not know how impactful it is, but it is very impactful when other people hear it. And what I'd like to do, if you don't mind, is just hear a little bit about your conversion, how you came to Christ, you know, how you grew up, those kinds of things, so that our people on the podcast can understand a little bit about you before we dive into some of the difficult questions that we're trying to answer.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So, grew up in West Hartford, Connecticut, and my childhood started off just really, kind of like happy in the beginning. Like it felt like suburban neighborhood. Elementary school was close to the house, playing with kids all over the neighborhood. And then things kind of started to get crazy when my mom got cancer. So she got cancer when I was like 7 or 8 years old. And it was like, I didn't understand what was happening, but long story short, it's like this crazy kind of cancer that only usually hits women in their 60s. And she was early 40s. And it got her quick. So she passed away September 24th, 1992. And I was just about to turn 10. And it was at that point that I just started to feel more, it was like a small hole started to grow inside of me as soon as she passed away. And so as I went into high school, I just felt like I lost all sense of who I was. I just got more and more lost. All I wanted to do was just please the people around me. I hate even admitting this, but I'm not tall now, but I was really short then. So I put stuffing in my shoes to make myself look taller, and I got made fun of a lot.
Well, yeah, none of us have ever done anything like that before to fit in, I'm sure. So you're not alone, brother, I promise.
So I got through high school, and by the time I was like, my dad and I weren't on the same page. We were fighting a lot, and so I heard that Charleston had pretty girls, and I wanted to play golf year round, and so I came, and I got rejected from my number one choice school, so I went to the College of Charleston, and then as soon as I got down here, I had these crazy roommates. So I had this one dude who like took a whole lot of Adderall and was kind of was a little nuts. And then I had this other dude who sold drugs out of the place and had a gun in the apartment. And then this other guy, Ashwin, who was a Christian. And I had never really been around Christians much, didn't know anything. I went to Catholic church like once a year. Actually get this off my chest. I brought marijuana on my confirmation retreat, if that tells you where I was at when it comes to Catholicism.
Yeah. I might have a story that kind of relates to that.
Classic.
I got you.
But Ashwin, there was just something about him. He didn't do all the stuff that I thought you needed to do to be happy. He didn't hook up with girls. I actually remember walking in downtown Charleston with him, and I saw a pretty girl look by, and I was like, "Oh man!" Like, look at her. And he looked too, and I was like, "Oh man!" I caught the Christian dude checking out a girl, and he was looking. I felt silly because he was looking at a car that had just gone by, and how cool it was. I was like, "Dude!" But yeah. I remember at one point, I'll never forget it. He said that he was certain he was going to heaven. And I had never even heard anybody say that they were certain there was a heaven. I kind of sort of believed that there was some God out there, maybe some ultimate truth, but I was really distrustful of anybody that claimed to know anything about it. And then he invited me to go to a Campus Crusade event, which is like this Christian organization on campus. And again, I thought the only way I could understand the philosophy of it was if I smoked up ahead of time. So I did. And I went there, and I was really like freaked out and paranoid when I went. But there was something like starting to draw me to this. And I just didn't know what it was. I felt like I was changing a little bit, but I wasn't sure. I didn't walk away from the event like, with any kind of real life change. But something was drawing my heart. I felt like, I remember the first real prayer I ever prayed my freshman year. I remember I just got to a point where I was so tired of searching for fulfillment. Because my deal was, when I got to the College of Charleston, I was like, all right, I'm going to do all the stuff now that in high school, I'm going to be one of the cool kids now. I'm going to, now I'm going to fix the stuff that was wrong in high school. So I started hooking up with the girls I wanted to hook up with. I started hanging out with the crowd I wanted to hang around. I started getting good grades in school, but none of it felt any better inside. And so eventually I got to a point where I remember I was in the Kelly House in downtown Charleston, and I remember I looked up at the ceiling, and my prayer was basically, if there's anybody out there that can hear me, please show up.
Yeah.
And it was nothing changed in that moment. There was just a sense. It was almost like if you drop a stone down a chasm and you hear it hit the bottom eventually. It was almost like I just felt like somehow that was heard. But I didn't think anything of it and just kind of kept going on with my day. So then December 12th of 2000, it was the last day before I was going home for my first Christmas break. I finished my freshman semester. And that night I remember I was about to go out to a party with some friends, and I was just tired. I was going to fly out the next day. So I went up to my room. I felt like I had some stuff on my mind. So I sat down at my computer and I was going to write, but then I was just really tired, and I just got in my bed and went to sleep. And as soon as I went to sleep, I had this crazy dream where it's so hard to even describe, but I was in this dark soul descending into this dark chasm with other dark souls. And I remember there was this huge light in front of me with these massive faces going up into the light. And one of the faces was my roommate, Ashwin. And I remember looking at him, and his face was so glorious. And he was sad as he was looking at me go down into this pit. So I woke up from the dream, and I was like, I didn't even believe in heaven or hell before that. I mean, I didn't. But it was so real. It was just like, I can't even describe it, but the way that my soul looked, it was almost like if somebody holds a mirror up to your face, even if you don't like what you see, you know it's your face.
I think they call that a vision.
Yeah, I appeared the way that I was, which sounds strange, but I don't know. That's just how it was, just so obviously me. It wasn't like some nightmare I could just like walk away from. So I went to his room at midnight. I just stumbled in my boxers, and he was sitting at his computer. And I remember I told him I didn't feel like there was any middle area. I had always thought that it was kind of like Mother Teresa, Hitler, and I was somewhere in the middle.
Right.
Like I wasn't.
That's a pretty wide middle there.
Yeah, I just thought like there were really good people, there were really bad people, and I was kind of like, I'm okay. I'm doing what college students do. Like, it's not a big deal. And I told him there was no middle area, and he spins around on his computer and he's like, "You're right." And he's like, "Do you want to pray to receive Christ? You want to pray the sinner's prayer?" And I had no idea what that was or what that meant. I just knew that something had to change. So he prayed with me right there. And I asked Jesus to be my Lord and Savior. And I remember, like, I didn't even believe, I mean, I can't even tell you, like, I didn't even believe that Jesus was real. Like, I mean, all the times going into Catholic church, I mean, there was nothing about it that felt compelling to me at all. So for me, it wasn't like some people that I run into in the South. It's like they always knew Jesus was the answer, but they ran away from it. For me, like, I would have like drifted to Buddhism or Hinduism or something like that if I had to choose.
Right.
So, but in that moment, I prayed to this Jesus that I didn't know. And I remember Ashwin looked up at me and he was like, dude, you're glowing. And I remember standing there in the hallway, and I was just like, that next morning I looked at my eyes in the mirror, and my my eyes looked different. Like I felt like there was like this light inside of me. He let me read his Bible that night, and I read it for like, I don't know, an hour or two, and I just felt like it was on fire because I had read it a little bit before to impress a girl. I was trying to I was dating this Christian girl, and I read it just a little bit to just be like, I read the Bible, and it was as boring as a box of rocks. I was like, it was like reading an encyclopedia. But this time I was reading something in Matthew, and I just remember feeling like the words were on fire. And then I went home to Connecticut the next day, and as soon as I got in the car, I was like, I thought everyone was going to be so excited for me. I was like, Dad, Jesus is real. And everybody thought I lost it. I mean,
what have you done with my son? Where is he?
College got to him.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I returned the weights I had stolen to the high school gym. I returned the golf club I had stolen to the local country club. I apologized to my neighbor for shooting his garage door windows with a BB gun. I wrote notes to my neighbors about Christ's love and brought him around. I eventually confessed to my dad. I had stolen a ton of money from him in high school, and that was it, man. That was the beginning.
Yeah, that's just a really, I mean, I never had that conversion. I think I grew up in the church. I didn't really believe it either, but I grew up with it, so I had a foundation. But I've never had a conversion like that. That's just, and it's so amazing to hear those kinds of stories and how God just reaches people, where they're at, and I will confess to you something. When we were moving out here, when we were looking to move out here, I looked at all the different colleges, and I told my sons, I said, moving to Charleston, there's 3 universities, one of them 70% female medical students. I think you guys will be okay. That was one of the main reasons for moving here too. So you're not the only one. All right. I'm just thinking about my boys. All right. Setting them up. But yeah, I mean, I've heard you say that before, that story. And I every time I hear it, I'm just like, that's amazing. Cause I can't imagine, first off, growing up, not hearing, about Christ and hearing who he was. And I remember just taking that for granted my whole entire life. But at the same time, I always believed it. But I can't imagine not having that. And then to feel his presence and to feel his love come in your life like that, that kind of conversion story always just gets me. It's amazing, But quick question for you. So do you feel, so now you've gone through this conversion, right? And what made you want to get into ministry, though? Because so it's one thing to be converted, right? A lot of people get converted, right? A lot of people go and give themselves to Christ, but not everybody decides to give their entire life, right? And say, hey, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. What brought that on? If you don't mind me asking.
Yeah. So, I mean, I went through college, and I feel like college for me, I made decent grades, but it was really about, I just was spending all the time I could in the Bible. And it was just like going from not even believing in heaven or hell or angels or demons or, any of that stuff. There was none of that was real to me. And then all of a sudden I'm like reading all this in this book, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So, I was like, I was flipping out for a while. I was just like, this is crazy, like demons attacking. And I just had no idea. Some of the stuff in the Bible just seems so crazy. It was just, and not having believed any of that before. Now I'm like, wow, what does this mean? So as I became a leader with Campus Crusade as I started growing. And Dude, I was so mad because just a small rabbit trail. I worked so hard to get girls before I became a Christian, and I was terrible. I had no game. Then all of a sudden, I become a Christian, and I become nice, and the girls were coming to me, and I had to say no. I was like, "This is the one." Of course, that's how it works.
Right.
So,
The temptation.
but I went through. I started helping out. There was actually a pastor at Seacoast Church that was helping out at the College of Charleston at the ministry that I was in, Campus Crusade. And this guy Naeem Fazil, who actually pastors a church in Charlotte right now, and he had a crazy conversion as well. And he just saw me, and he was like he saw something in me, and he's like, we got to start meeting. So I started meeting with him, and I started going to Seacoast, and it felt very. I was going to this other like Baptist church, but I felt like there was nothing for me to do. Like I went to the services, and there was like great preaching, great singing, but I wasn't like serving or doing anything there. And I didn't even know that's what I needed. But all of a sudden, when I started going to Seacoast, they got me driving a golf cart in the parking lot, picking people up from their cars and taking them back, taking them to the church. And I felt like I was needed. I felt like I was actually putting my faith in action. So I began serving at Seacoast. And then this other pastor started like taking me under his wing, and he started saying like, man, I see stuff in you, and I feel like, this is something you could do. And I was thinking law school. Like I had no idea what I was going to do. I was a poli-sci major, and I was thinking law school, but I started functioning in this kind of like pastoral role with this mentor of mine. And then it was like I got out of college, and I did construction out at Folly Beach. I cleaned pools at Kiowa. And then I worked at a hotel, which I got fired from. and then like literally a job came open to lead the college campus of Seacoast that used to exist. It was called Seacoast Downtown. And I started leading that campus in downtown Charleston when I was 21 and came on staff. And so it wasn't like this like audible voice. To me, I guess the call really developed. There was just sort of this feeling of like, gosh, like, how could I can't see myself giving my life to anything else like this. I don't know how else to say it. It was just kind of like, I know, especially given my dream. For me, I love discipling people. I love helping believers. But for me, I'm like, you could understand hell is real to me.
Yeah.
Like the church doesn't like to talk about hell that much. Like it's not something people enjoy hearing about. But given my dream and the way I came into the faith, I believe it exists, and I still do. So for me, the thought of playing a role in making sure as many people as possible don't have to go to the place that I saw in that dream, I couldn't imagine doing anything else.
Yep. Hey, I'd love to jump in here just because like you just opened the door wide open to what we're trying to do in Iron Edge. So obviously not all roads lead to ministry. Like everybody that comes to faith doesn't have to be a pastor, right? But you talked about this critical point where you felt, so you were at one church, but you didn't feel connected, right? There was all the good things were there. They like the great preaching and whatnot, but you didn't feel connected. And that's what we're dealing like everywhere me and Pete go, we end up talking to some dude that is in the exact same situation. But you said you just started picking people up in the golf cart, and that made you feel connected. So help our listeners with exactly that. Okay, you might not become a pastor because you start driving the golf cart, but this engagement and getting involved, like just talk about that a little bit. What our guys can do and how you see that working today.
Yeah. So, for me, I think especially because I didn't grow up in any kind of culture where I ever felt like I needed to go to church. There was no sense ever in my life that church was something I needed to do. Like that was just not how I grew up at all. So for me, before I started going to Seacoast, I was going to all kinds of different churches because why not? But what I was reading in the Bible was telling me now I'm a part of this family. And I was never, I never felt really a part of a family like that before. And it's telling me like, you're a part of the body of Christ. And so I'm starting to learn and read these verses a little bit. And I'm like, okay, so this isn't about church buildings. Like it's who I am, like whether I like it or not. This crazy thing just happened to me. And it turns out that it's happened to a lot of people, which I didn't know. And now I'm a part of this family. So it's like, okay, so I guess I got to get involved with with this church family. But for me, at first, that just meant going to all kinds of different churches. I didn't know you needed to pick one or to just go to different ones every Sunday. I mean, to me, I was like, now I know I'm a Christian. I can go Catholic, Pentecost. I don't care. I just know that I'm the real deal. Like I know that I'm a Christian. So then one dude, actually it was that guy, Naeem, we were driving in his car one time and I'll never forget it. It was just one of those moments where he saw me going to all these different churches and he was referring to the book of Nehemiah, which I had never read before, but he looked at me and he said, Russo, what part of the wall are you working on? Because he saw me going in all these different churches and I didn't commit to one. And he said, which part of the wall are you working on?
And that's really good.
And
really good.
And it was, and honestly, it went through me like a hot knife through butter. It was just one of those things where it was just like, and I knew. So then in 2003, so 3 years after I had been converted, I got baptized out in the ocean with Seacoast, and I was like, okay, this is my church. This is going to be my church. And it really came from that challenging moment with that guy. But it really like, I just can't say enough how for me what mattered the most was I'm a part of this church family. Like I have to be a part of this. It's not like going to church. Like I don't care about, the golf cart or the building. It was like I have to be involved and committed with this family that I just got born into.
Yeah.
Like to not do that would be like to deny the reality of what just happened to me. So I don't know, that's where it had come from. It was never about like, I didn't care if they had coffee or, I honestly, it didn't matter that much about the golf cart. I mean, there were people there that loved me, but honestly, it really wasn't about them. It was about whether I like it or not now, this is who I am and I got to be a part of it.
Perfect.
Yeah. It's service. Yeah. I'll share a little bit. When I started this, I was in a place of, I'd say resentment to the church, honestly, which is funny because I started this at a place of resentment. I was mad because I couldn't seem to find anywhere to serve. There's some things that had happened that I took a little too close to my heart, and as we've gone along and as this has grown, God's really worked on me and said, first off, that all happened for a reason. And here we are talking. But the issue isn't the church. It isn't the people in the church. It's you quitting and giving up. If you quit and give up, trying to find that place where you can serve, where I want you to serve, then that's on you. It's not anybody else's fault. The church is going to be there. The church is going to be there no matter what we do, what we say. You can sit and blame people all day long, but really it depends on your choices and what you decide to go do. And it's what you're telling me is like, God put this in front of you. He had a good brother who did what we do in Iron Edge, which is sharpen each other. We talk about, you don't use a stone to sharpen your sword. You're using each other and you're sparring with each other, which means you're exposing weakness in each other in order to overcome that and move forward. And so that's exactly what he did in this case is, hey, you need to, figure this out, buddy. And he wasn't afraid to say that. I think a lot of times we find right now, especially that people are reluctant to do that. We're finding it's harder and harder to speak our minds and say what we really need to say because we might offend somebody or hurt their feelings, whatever. But that's what needs to happen in order to push people. And that's what God has been doing with me through this ministry, through talking with Shad and some of the other guys. It's up to us to take those steps. And the church is only going to grow and thrive if we take that initiative and get in there and start driving the golf cart, and then going from there to wherever he wants us to go. But that kind of leads me to another question I have of you, though. It's like, So you've been a pastor for 20 years or so, right? I mean, for a while.
Since I came on staff, 2000. No, I came on staff 04. So yeah, 17.
Almost 20 years. Yeah, 20 years.
Yeah.
And so, well, actually, it's only 2021, right? I gotta get my math right. Almost 20 years.
Yeah.
I'm jumping ahead. I lose track of time. Sometimes I get old. But now that you've been been pastoring for a while, do you feel like you are actually fulfilling your mission? You're fulfilling your calling in Christ. Does it come like, is there like a satisfaction, or is there like a constant craving to continue to do more? And I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, I would say both. I think one of the big things that, and this is ongoing work, but I would say one of the big things that I realize now is like, okay, like, so I'm God's son. So like, I don't wake up in the morning and God's like, all right, like I'll like you when you're nice to other people, but I'm going to be pissed at you when you're, a jerk to your wife. Like it took me a long time to realize that God was just like pleased with me. Like not that he's happy with everything that I do, but with me as a person, he's just pleased with me. Like, that's just like, he doesn't look at me and see this wretched sinner anymore. And I had heard that so many times, but it just took years and years and years for that to really sink in. It just, sorry.
No, it's okay. We can cut it out. Just wait till they're done talking.
Okay. Hey, Mac, I'm on a podcast, man. Could you keep it down just a little? Okay.
We're not cutting that. We're not cutting that out. Great. We're totally leaving that in. I'm going to leave that in and make sure that it goes live to Greg, Pastor Greg. Hey, Mac.
That's so funny.
Your associate pastor in the background. Shut up. All right. Go ahead. Continue on.
So, I don't know what we were saying.
Where were we? We're talking about, does it ever go away, or you're constantly trying to find more? Or you said you felt like God just looks at you and he's pleased with you.
Yeah. So I just went for the longest time, and I feel silly saying this because I knew the gospel, I could say the gospel, but there was this feeling like if I'm out baptizing people, or if I'm like on a mission trip, God's happy with me then. But then if I was mean to Abby, or if I was whatever, messed up.
And I can't imagine that. I'm pretty sure she'd whoop your ass, but just saying.
Yeah.
I just can't see it.
Sometimes, yeah.
You don't have to respond to that. I'm not a pastor, Chris. I'll get away with that one. You won't.
So, wait, what was I saying?
If you're mean to Abby, he's not looking at you like you're a sinner.
I just really felt like God must be disappointed. And I would have this feeling like I had to work up to his pleasure or something like that. And then there were just these moments I would have where I felt like God said, I'm not frustrated with you. Like, that was a moment where I really felt like I heard God say, I'm not frustrated with you. Like, I was walking around all the time feeling like God was just mad at me, like constantly like tolerating me. Like when is he going to get this? Disappointment was like, I had never had like this sense that he's just happy with me. So the more I started to realize just that that's how he sees me, the more that I wanted to fulfill I've wanted to fulfill his calling on my life, just because I love him. Just because I love him, and not to make sure I make it into heaven, not to make sure that when I get to the other side that he's happy to see me, So yes, there's a sense that I know that this world is dark, and I want to play my part to bring light into people's lives. I mean, I want to do that, but I'm not. And I feel like for a long time though, I was doing it because I wanted to make God happy, and that was kind of broken. It was like I'm fulfilling my call. And when is it ever going to be enough? So for me, it was like, I never preached enough messages. I never preached to enough people. I've never gone on enough mission trips. It was like there was this sense that nothing was ever enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so for our guys listening, just critical that we start out with the fact that when we accept Christ, and actually even before that, God loves us. There's nothing that we could ever do to earn that love. That's the amazing thing about grace, and it's also the amazing thing about his mercy when we're walking with him, right? It's not this constant performance thing. The relationship sets the tone for the whole thing, and it's father and son. And, and then he's got a spirit just directing us and leading us all along the way. I'm kind of blown away by the statement that you made, to just even going back a little bit further in Nehemiah, because oftentimes anybody that's been in the church for a minute has heard it as you have to be planted and let your roots go deep. But this notion of building, and in that action right there, we're finding the fulfillment that Pete just asked you about.
Yeah.
And how do we know that we're on the right track and we're on this mission? But if we're building, where we're supposed to build, it's like it all lines up. The other great thing about that story is that there was a plow in one hand, or they were building with one hand, and they had a sword in the other hand.
Yeah.
And we're talking about iron sharpens iron. So we're building and we're ready to fight. And that was to have each other's back. People would come when there was, a fight at that particular spot on the wall. Other people that were working would come over and support that, that exact person and that exact location. I mean, this is everything that we're trying to do here on Iron Edge, is support the guy that is in the fight. And he was building and then he's in the fight.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And we're running to their aid and getting their back. So I love this, but just to kind of reiterate going back to the relationship, but then finding that satisfaction that Pete was talking about and finding that fulfillment. And that's where we want to help guys recognize, am I doing the right thing? Can you speak to that just a little bit more?
Am I doing the right thing?
Am I on the right path? Fulfilling my mission, and because again, it's not that every single person that comes to faith is going to be a pastor. So
right.
It's the everyday guy that's going to work, raising a family. Yeah, maybe going to church too and supporting there. But
I think that God is. The one thing that I got really early on in my walk is it was like, man, people would just say, pursue Jesus and he'll take care of the rest, right? So I didn't know about leadership. I didn't grow up with any of that stuff. So for me, it wasn't grow to be a pastor, grow to be a leader. It was just go after Jesus with everything that you have. And the thing that I found out, because I've talked to a lot of guys too, that are like, what am I doing the right thing? What's my calling? What's my direction? One thing that I just think is true about God is he's a really good communicator. And I don't think anyone is going to get to the end of their life and be able to say in authenticity in front of God, I would have followed you if you had been more clear. I would have followed you if you weren't such a lousy communicator. Because it's almost like there are a lot of people that are like, God, I just want to hear you all the time, but I just can never hear you. So because of that, I never have confidence in what I'm doing. So I just think that, it's kind of like putting how you fill a container with the big rocks and the medium rocks, so on and so forth, until it's sand. It's like you're pursuing Jesus with everything you got. You don't know if you're going to get married. You don't know if you're going to have kids. You don't know where you're going to live or what you're going to do, but you're pursuing Jesus. And I think that as you do that, God didn't tell me I'm going to be a pastor the rest of my life. What if today someone comes through the door and I end up going into sales, or today could be my last day in vocational ministry. God didn't tell me how long he was going to have me in this. So for me, it's less about I've found my calling, and more like I've been taking obedient steps where I go through the open doors that are in front of me based on what's clear in the moment, as I seek wise counsel and whatever. And this is where I am right now. But I kind of feel like, so for me, the bread and butter of, am I doing the right thing? Am I following the right deal? Am I in the right spot? Is, man, what people have told me. And I feel like it's so cliche, but I just feel, I don't know that I've met anyone who truly prioritizes this that ends up getting left high and dry. It's like, man, Matthew 6, there's so many passages, but it's like, go after Jesus, make your relationship with him, your time in his word, make your time in the body, like spending time with other dudes and trying to grow together, like get those things in place. And you're not going to miss it. Like you're going to hear him. He's such a good, like, I'm like Jonah was running in the opposite direction and was asleep on a boat and God could get his attention. It's kind of like, he's not, I hate it when people talk about hearing God like it's some kind of radio station that we gotta like just be like, we gotta be in this perfect meditative state, and it's like I saw a bird land on a sign and then the wind blew on my face and I think that might have meant this. I'm like, God just knows how to talk to you in a way that you know it's him, so he's gonna tell you.
Yeah, we talk about that with, especially when we were talking about open doors and it's like, man, I'm looking for the open doors. It's like, just move forward. If he doesn't want you to go a certain direction, he's going to shut that door, and then you look around for the open one. Because when you stop moving forward and getting stagnant, that's really what's happening with a lot of the men that we deal with. It's a stagnation of and a fear, and then just a lack of direction. A lot of what we do in here is we have a lot of military veterans and stuff like that in here, and I remember we were looking at veteran suicide a lot and why. And the ultimate reason comes down to purpose and direction. Like people they come out of the military and they're lost of purpose, and then nobody's there to give them direction on how to find that purpose and all this other stuff. And so they end up just giving up hope and killing themselves in record numbers. And it shows it's not just the military, it's men in general. We have to figure out the purpose and direction and then just move forward. It doesn't mean we have to see the entire picture clearly in front of us every time. We're probably never going to. I gave up planning my life a long time ago. God, Shad knows me from before. I mean, I had all sorts of grandiose ideas. I think I would have envisioned myself as like a punk rock star or something like that when I was a kid. But that's definitely the entire opposite direction of where I ended up going. But it's like we just have to keep moving forward. And I want to tell you, Chris, what you're saying right now, whether it reaches anybody else, I'm listening. Because I'm at a point in my life right now where I'm trying to figure a lot of this out. And what you're saying is actually resonating with me. I've stood back a lot and just been in the shadows trying to say, well, I should be doing this. And I think what gets in my way a lot is my ego of what I think I should be doing, what God's actually called me to do or wants me to do in that moment. And I've let that keep me from moving forward a lot. And so I think what you're saying is definitely going to resonate with a lot of the other men in the group. One hard question I got for you, though.
Hey, before you go there.
Yeah.
So powerful what you just said. And two things come to mind just real quick while we're on this point. One, a friend of mine, Pastor Amanda Connor, she just moved to Coventry, England, said just this past weekend, actually, that we need to spend more time preparing than we do planning. And that just ties right in with the notion of following God. And I will say I had a moment this past weekend. This is my vulnerability time, Pete, where I was staying at my parents' house for a couple of days. And they live right beneath the chapel at the church. So I just walked up there and I walked in and I was, I just needed to get with God alone. And I was like, Lord, I feel like you're not speaking to me, like I'm accustomed to, and I need to hear your voice. And it was just like, as clear as day. Well, you stopped listening. And I was like, oh, and it wasn't like I stopped hearing. I stopped listening and obeying is really what he meant. And, when we tell your kids, listen to what I'm saying, you're saying, do what I'm telling you to do.
Yeah.
And it was just like, okay, you're right, Lord. You've told me so many things and I just haven't carried them out. I've just thought about them. I've just, whatever. I've just tried to plan it, as opposed to just continuing to just prepare myself and be ready and to go through the open door. So yeah, I agree with Pete. Everything you're saying right now is kicking our butts, resonating with us. But I know it is with the rest of the guys too. Absolutely.
I do want to talk to you real quick though, Chris, about but just within your own church, within Seacoast, West Ashley. I know that I think a lot of men feel like there's this invisible wall between leadership in a church and the people. Like there's no opportunity for fellowship or mentorship or things like that, or to serve. Really, they feel like there's just, I'm not good enough, or I'm not there, and these people are really busy and they don't have time, and blah blah blah. What do you do with West Ashley, with Seacoast West Ashley? What do you do specifically to do outreach to men if it's there? What do you have going on right now?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't want to ever shame guys. I feel like, the thing that Jesus does with us is he invites us into an adventure. He invites us into a journey. So I feel like there's this deal of like, I want to move people away from the or else faith. Like, do this to be a good Christian. Do this because it's the right thing to do. Do this because whatever. It's like Jesus is inviting you into more. And I want that to come out of my life. I mean, like we've got, and we don't have this figured out, right? I mean, I feel like one thing is, as a pastor, I feel like the most important thing I can do is live what I'm asking other people to do. And there's a part of me that still wants to be isolated. There's a part of me that's still just looking in the mirror, like that wants to shut people out, that feels like, I mean, honestly, one of the hardest parts about Sunday morning is I feel like there are all these moments where people want like an 8 or a 9 for me, and I'm scared that I can only give them a 2 or a 3. And that's where the stress comes from. When I pull in the parking lot, there's this feeling of like, I need to be an 8 or a 9, but I feel like a 2. And and that makes me want to hide, because I'm like, I'm going to fail them. I'm going to fail everybody. I'm going to mess up. I'm going to blow it, kind of thing. And, but I feel like, pushing through that, I mean, we do like a men's hike that I'm actually going on. I'll be with 20 guys in the mountain next week. We're sending 2 teams. It'll be 40 guys, basically from Thursday to Sunday. No cell phones. Just set, 25 miles or so, setting up camp, talking around a fire. And the way that guys open up in that atmosphere of confidentiality is incredible. I think that it's definitely not about the programs, though. I mean, we've done, we had a breakfast recently. We've got men's groups and all that kind of stuff. But it's like, I think that what it really takes is as guys start to live it, they start to invite other people. Like you start to see guys like just meeting because they want to meet, because they want to grow, because you start to just, it's like, I feel like, you can't, there's no formula for it. Like there's nothing I could ever say to a church. It's like, so that's where for me, I'm like, I feel like my biggest responsibility as the pastor is, because I'm going to come up with the right ideas if I'm living it. Right. It's like, it's the number one thing for me. I feel like the best thing I can do for the church is personally grow and step into the life that God's calling me to live. Because as I do that, like you can make it, you could have a great breakfast. I think you get what I'm saying. It's like you could have,
Well, we did, when we started with this, we were like, okay, let's start a men's group. And I was like, no, there's enough men's groups out there. We don't need a men's group. We need fellowship. We need fellowship. It doesn't need to be revolving around what the pastor spoke about on the weekend. We can go back and watch that on YouTube. It doesn't need to revolve around a certain scripture. It doesn't need to be structured. It just needs to be, hey, you want to go to Top Golf, hit some balls. Okay, let's go. And then in those moments is where you have fellowship. If you look back historically, there used to be, especially in tribal communities, always had the elders, right? And the men would go off and do things like the hunts. And there was a lot of fellowship because there wasn't so many distractions, which is what we have a lot of nowadays. We have a lot of, I have to do this. I have to work in order to, 2 jobs in order to make, our time is taken up, and we are missing that fellowship with each other, and that's what needs to happen. That's what we're trying to facilitate here. Like we have our chapters for some of the locations that people are stepping up to be captains in. They're like, so what do we do? I was like, I don't know. What do you want to do? Go play baseball. Go to the pub. I don't care, but fellowship with each other. You need to sharpen each other. You need to have conversations. Those aren't going to happen typically in larger groups that are real meaningful. So you have to create some of these smaller groups, get together and go do stuff. If only 2 people say, hey, I want to go golfing with you, that's enough. Where 2 or 3 are gathered, right? And he's going to be there with you. And that's where those friendships are going to be created. But we're missing that, I think, generationally. I'd say my generation on down, our generation, Shad, yours too, Chris, on down, we're missing that. That fellowship is out the door. And that's what's causing a lot of these problems. So it can't be structured. It does have to be lead by example, like you're saying. It has to be, I'm open and available to do something with somebody. I'm not too busy to do something with somebody. I can take that time. And it has to be, it's not about ego or exposure or I need to be in the spotlight. It has to be, I'm just available to talk to somebody and be with them, I was thinking about Billy Graham, how he got started. He snuck into a tent church meeting. He was goofing off and some porter stuck him in the front row and said, sit here. That's how he was converted. That porter was just available. He was there serving, but that guy stuck Billy Graham in that row and he got saved. Right. And then reached millions and millions of people. So it's like, who's more important in that equation, really? And it's not a matter of importance. I'm just trying to provide some context here. We all have a role to play. Doesn't matter what we think is important or not. Just being available, though, and being able to fellowship with each other and provide each other with some confidence and some motivation, purpose, direction is enough, I think. So,
yeah. One of the things I appreciated that you said was that you're not going to shame men. And guys, plug in, right? It's not a checklist. It's this building, like, go back where you started. This is building. This is doing life with Jesus. This is doing life with other men. And in the same way, I don't want to shame the church because we need the church to do men's events. Me and Pete can't put on a men's event. We don't have the building. We don't have all that stuff. So those stuff are important. Those things are really important and churches should do that. But it's Monday through Saturday that guys need to get together. Then when these events do come, they'll be powerful. Yeah. I mean, you got all these guys that aren't having to, show up to the event to get something, but to bring something. Holy smokes.
Yeah.
Like that'll reform the church right there.
Instead of being consumers all the time, being contributors. I think that's a huge part of it. Hey, we're gonna wrap it up. We've been talking for a long time.
Yeah.
And I think all the people with ADD already gave up on us. So, but thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for your heart and where it's at. I don't think this would be, by the way, Pastor Chris is a member of Iron Edge. So he is there on the national and the Charleston chapters. Reach out if you want to ask a question or something like that, converse. He's there. You've just heard him pour out his heart to you. But we're looking forward to where this goes in the future. Hopefully maybe we'll get some opportunities I think we're going to have opportunities to provide purpose and direction for these guys to go into some of these churches that they're looking for. Because we have a pretty good solid core group of guys who are Christians now, but I have a feeling there's a lot of guys out there who aren't. They're going to come into this and they're going to need that direction and they're going to need to be able to plug into to churches. And that's what we'd like to do. So, but thanks again for the time.
Man.
You got any final words for us?
Can we do a kind of like give us your last, leave us with one thing or takeaway from today?
Drop some knowledge, man.
Yeah. Find places where you can be real. Find places where you can be real and where you can be vulnerable. Because it's one thing to be transparent. It's transparent for me to say that I struggle with pride and lust. Like every guy struggles with pride and lust. But it's like vulnerability, though, means I'm taking a risk. And what I've so appreciated about this time with you guys is you gave me an invitation to, you're like, be real. So I feel called out to be like, all right, I'm not going to give these guys, the whatever churchy answer. I'm going to give them the most real thing that I can possibly give them. And the more that you do that, in your friendships, wherever you are, you're going to create community around you. You're going to create community around you. You're going to create connection. You're going to be a catalyst for community instead of a consumer. And I think that that's the biggest thing, because it's like there just aren't a lot of contexts where most of the time when people ask how you're doing, there's just not a lot of context where you're invited or where you feel safe to be who you really are, to say what's really going on. You always, people expect stuff from you. You're a dad, you're a husband, you got to be strong. You can't show weakness. It wouldn't be professional. It wouldn't be this, that, or the other. Find context where how you're doing matters. Where you're around people, whether it's a counselor or a pastor or a group of guys at a pub or whatever, find a context where there are people who really care how you're doing that you can talk to. Because one of the things that I see is so many guys don't have that they lose connection with how they're doing. And all kinds of things can go wrong when that happens.
Yeah, you can lose your identity through that kind of stuff. I mean,
oh yeah,
nobody.
You become two people.
You're in isolation all the time. Nobody's ever telling you what you need to work on, or if you're sharpening you like iron sharpens iron. You'll lose who you are real quick.
You're like you're alone in a cave, and you got your torch, and anybody that comes in, you're fighting them off, right? Because you're scared. You don't want to get out of that cave. So, and all of us can kind of be like that. So it's like, have to find the places where you feel invited to come out of the cave and be like, man, this is who I am. Good, bad, whatever, weird. This is me.
Well, I know the Charleston chapter, we're going to look forward to doing a fishing trip pretty soon. I'm going to be posting that on there for guys to come join me fishing. Awesome. And we're going to bring you, because last time you caught the biggest red and it was your first fish or something crazy like that I've ever seen. I'm going to show a picture of it here. It was ridiculous. This is what happens when you take a pastor. But of course, he's the only one that caught a really big fish that day. So,
but was it bigger than one I caught with you?
Actually, yours might have been bigger. We'll do a side by side comparison of both y'all's. But we'll definitely get to do some stuff like that, I think, locally as well, and I'm looking forward to that. Thank you, Pastor Chris, Seacoast, West Ashley. You can go there and listen to him do some interesting things with spoken word every once in a while. That tripped me out a little bit. And then he's still got a little bit of that hippie left in him, I think, from the college days. But thank you again for joining us and speaking with us. I think we'll have another one in the future too. Hopefully we'll be able to talk to you again in the future as this grows. But God bless. Thanks a lot. That was amazing. And honestly, whether anybody else gets anything out of this, I got a lot out of that. And I have a lot to think about now regarding finding and fulfilling my own mission. It's amazing to hear those kinds of stories and to see God use somebody who had no clue before, and never heard of him before, you reached college, and just to see the amount of see how much God has used him since his conversion. And I think it just gives you a good understanding that a lot of this finding and fulfilling our mission is really in our court. It's up to us. We can get mad at the church. We can get mad at pastors. We can get mad at the people who offend us at the church. We can get mad at all sorts of different things within the church, or where it's not where it should be. But it doesn't matter if we don't step up and start moving forward in what God's called us to do. We can't worry about the entire church. All we can worry about is our portion of the wall, like he was saying. And by the way, when we leave that portion of the wall that we've been assigned to, we leave a vulnerability for the entire body of Christ that needs to be filled. And so I think that the message here is pretty clear, and we definitely would love to hear from you all. If you want to leave comments, please leave comments. Any questions that you have, please leave those. He is a member of the Charleston chapter and the national chapter. If you want to reach out directly to him, you can through the app. If you're not signed up on the app, you probably should. There's a lot going on in there that we can't do on the Facebook private group or social media, but we definitely want to hear from him again, I think, in the future. So God bless you. Thank you for taking the time. Shad, any final words?
Hey guys, just remember, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another.
That's right. And get a hat. These hats are awesome, by the way. And yes, I did design this hat, so I'm pretty proud of it. But I finally broke down and got one. You should get a hat. Take care, y'all. We'll talk to you in a few weeks.